Hi everybody and welcome back to Grow into March, and we are at week 2 where we are discussing reality in the Grow model and goal setting. So yesterday I spoke about internal factors that can get in the way of us achieving our goals. So they're everything that you experience that nobody can grab on camera, and that would be thoughts, beliefs and kind of bodily sensations in the moment. But today I'm going to move on to external factors and how we can overcome them. And I'm going to teach you one of my top 3 favorite skills of all time. This is an amazing skill. It has completely changed my life, and I have no doubt it'll change yours, and it will change the way in which you set goals forever and accomplish those goals. So this skill is called Cope Ahead. And it's important to use this skill in any event where you feel like, 1, you're not going to succeed, or 2, that there will be an obstacle that will come up that you feel like you won't be able to come back from or cope with. So you practice this skill by imagining a situation that's stressful to you, and you imagine coping effectively in that situation. So I'll tell you a bit about how I came to learn this skill and use it. So in a past employment of mine, like in an old job I had, about 60% of my job was presenting, and presenting to quite big groups. So I one day lost my voice, and it took a few minutes to get it back when I was in front of a big group of people, and I was really humiliated and embarrassed. And you know, I've always had a little bit of a fear of public speaking. It kind of like comes and goes in waves. But my fear was way up then after that incident, because I just felt so silly and it was just not nice. So I would say my anxiety out of 10 with public speaking became an 8. So it was way up the end of the scale, right towards the 10. So this was a big problem for me because this was a huge part of my job. And you know, with any kind of role I've had, a certain amount of public speaking has been involved. So it wasn't something that I could kind of shy away from. So I tried different things to lessen my anxiety or to make me be able to kind of get over it in the moment. So I would, when I go into a presentation, like the next 2 times, I kept saying to myself, you know, affirmations. It'll be okay, it'll be okay, it'll be all right. And, you know, I would walk in and I would say, it'll be okay. And my anxiety would go from an 8 to maybe a 5. But actually would shoot back up again as soon as, you know, I'd start talking. And, you know, what I was doing is what psychologists would call a safety cue. And the research shows that this doesn't work, and it doesn't work for very long. So I was thinking to myself, like, I need to find something. I need to figure this out and I need to solve this. So what am I going to do? So I did a bit of research and I found this skill and I started to implement it. So, you know, I have usually about a week's notice of a big presentation was coming up. So I started using this skill and I started imagining myself in the presentation, and I kind of imagine, you know, my worst fear, which would be losing my voice. So I kind of imagine that. And then I started to come up with solutions. So one of my solutions was to, if I stopped talking and my voice went, that I would, you know, I would usually be kind of at a big podium, and there would be space under the podium where there would be wires for my laptop, and that's where I kind of store my bag and stuff, and, you know, a bottle of water. So what I would do, you know, when I was kind of imagining it, you know, I would take a moment, kind of go, 1 sec, pretend there's a technical issue, and go down under the podium, take 3 deep breaths, drink a bit of water, and then I'd be back up again. And then I'd imagine the presentation going amazing. Everyone's giving me like a standing ovation. So that was great. So I started doing that in Coping Ahead, and I used to run that scenario in my head over and over, and me coping effectively. But then, you know, that helped for a while, but then my brain started saying, well, what if you have a drink of water and you can't talk? And, you know, that's a valid fear. Actually, there is a huge chance that I could go up, do my little thing, have my drink of water, and then I couldn't cope. And then I was thinking, okay, well, what if my voice doesn't come back? What do I do then? So in that instance, I imagined just calling up my co-facilitator and kind of sitting down until my voice came back and kind of letting them take the lead. So after I kind of imagined coping ahead effectively and then coping ahead when my worst fear came true, I didn't feel anxious really anymore when I went up to do presentations. It's maybe a 2 or a 3 depending on the situation. So yeah, now I can do presentations. It doesn't really affect me anymore. So with this skill, it's very important that you kind of bring to mind what you're afraid of. So for me, what I was afraid of was the presentation. So that's what I'm afraid of. 2, what's the threat? So the threat for me was losing my voice and being humiliated. And then thirdly, how will I cope? So how I would cope in that situation, if I'm to overcome it, would be to stop, pause, take a couple of breaths, have a drink of water, and get going again. Or alternatively, if nothing works, then it was to just kind of practice the acceptance that I can't do the presentation today, but my colleague will have to take over. So you kind of have to ask yourself those 3 questions. You also have to imagine the situation as vividly as possible. So I know sometimes when we do visualizations, we imagine ourselves kind of, on a TV screen or in kind of a computer screen. You can't really do that. It needs to be in real time and it needs to be as if it's actually happening. So when you're kind of imagining the situation, an emotion has to show up. So when the emotion shows up, then you know you're onto something and you can cope ahead. So bring up the emotion, bring up the situation, pretend it's really happening in the moment, and the problem solving will come. So if you kind of have problems imagining, what you can do is you can talk it out verbally. I know that a lot of us, when we close our eyes, we can't really see pictures or colors. So something could just be talking it out with yourself or talking it out with a friend. So this skill is great because the more you practice it, the more you'll feel infectious because your brain and your body will store it as you've mastered that skill. And it's just a really amazing way to problem solve ahead of time. So practice coping ahead, pick a situation. And, for a lot of people, a lot of our students, we do a lot of career prep and career planning. And, you need to bring something to mind when you're doing cope ahead that there's a huge probability of it happening. So for a lot of people, job interviews are scary. And maybe for you, if you're looking for work or you're thinking about kind of applying for a job, you can think about coping ahead when a job interview comes your way. So it could be, imagining, the interview asking you a question that kind of you stumble on and you answer, but you don't feel like you've answered great. And you can imagine coping ahead, kind of coming back from that, maybe saying to the interviewer, oh, can I answer that question again? Or answering the other questions really well. Or you can imagine maybe being stuck and saying, move on to the next question. And kind of coping ahead in that as well. So kind of bring something to mind that's something that you will experience and will be a challenge. And then imagine yourself succeeding in that situation and then coping and effectively managing if you do hit an obstacle that you don't overcome. And see how you get on. And thank you, everybody. So I'm going to add on more information about coping ahead below. But if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. And I look forward to seeing you next week for O in the GROW model, which is obstacles. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend.